My dad turned our home into his personal dictatorship until I staged a coup he'll never forget. After my mom died when I was 12, my father turned our home into a prison disguised as order. He started with 10 reasonable rules like clean your dishes and be home by 10. But within a year, he was timing our bathroom breaks and making us sign a log sheet every time we opened the refrigerator. He had laminated lists on every wall with 200 rules that were so specific they made breathing feel illegal. The worst part was how he enforced them. When I came home from a 16-hour double shift dying of thirst and stepped into the kitchen during his forbidden hours, he locked me out for 2 days. When my grandfather called from the hospital, my father said, "No calls after 8 p.m., grabbed my phone and smashed it against the wall. My grandfather died alone that night while I sat phoneless in my room. When I mentioned missing mom at dinner, he gave me the silent treatment for a week and threw my meals in the trash while warning me about the rule of not speaking at the dinner table. When my friend accidentally honked while picking me up for work, he grounded me for 2 weeks and I lost my job since I couldn't explain why I stopped showing up. He even found my hidden college acceptance letter during one of his inspections and burned it with his lighter at dinner while saying, 'You'll never escape me.' The night everything changed started when my girlfriend surprised me after my double shift with takeout from my favorite place. We were eating at the kitchen table when she reached for the salt shaker, completely unaware that salt was forbidden in our house. My father appeared in the doorway like he'd been summoned, and his face went from calm to volcanic within seconds. "No salt in this house!" He screamed it so loud that she dropped the shaker, and it rolled across the table, leaving a trail of white grains. "I'm sorry, I didn't know," my girlfriend stammered, but he was already moving toward her. The back of his hand connected with her face so hard, she spun sideways off her chair and hit the table edge on the way down. When she touched her lip, her fingers came away covered in red. "Maybe now you'll remember to respect this household." My father said it like he'd just taught a child not to touch a hot stove. I felt something inside me finally die because 6 years of swallowing his abuse suddenly meant nothing compared to watching him hurt her. That's when I decided to teach him a lesson he'll never forget. I helped my girlfriend to my car and drove her home in complete silence while she held a napkin to her bleeding lip. At her house, her 3 brothers were watching TV in the living room. They were construction workers who spent their days moving heavy things and their nights at the gym, and the oldest one took one look at his sister's bloody lip and stood up slowly like he was ready to end someone. I told them everything about my father's rules and the punishments and the years of calculated cruelty. The middle brother kept clenching and unclenching his fists while the youngest one had tears in his eyes, and the youngest told me, "No one lays a hand on our sister and gets away with it." I explained my plan to them. Every Sunday morning at 9, he sits alone reviewing his rules while his security cameras record everything. That's when you can visit. I didn't sleep at all Saturday night because I kept seeing Sarah's blood on my father's floor and hearing his voice saying she'd learned to respect his household. By Sunday morning, my hands were steady with purpose as I made coffee and carried the pot toward the security system. My father sat at the dining room table surrounded by his laminated lists, completely absorbed in his weekly ritual of reviewing every single rule. The coffee spilled perfectly across the recording equipment, and I watched the lights flicker and die while my father remained oblivious. My girlfriend's brothers arrived exactly 10 minutes later and didn't bother knocking because I'd left the door unlocked for them. My father actually tried to quote a rule at them saying, "In my house," but the oldest brother cut him off by picking up the nearest laminated list and tearing it in half with deliberate slowness. Then he tore those halves in half while my father's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. They didn't beat him up because they didn't need to. Instead, they methodically made him feel what I'd felt for years, which was complete powerlessness. They flipped his precious furniture and destroyed every single one of his lists while he cowered in the corner begging them to stop. The youngest brother put him in the same wrist lock my father had used on me countless times and forced him to eat pieces of his torn-up salt rule, while the other two explained in graphic detail exactly what would happen if he ever touched their sister again. "Now you know how your son felt for years," the oldest brother said before they left him crying on the floor, surrounded by the destroyed remnants of his empire. I packed my bags and moved in with my girlfriend that night, while my father sat in his ruined kingdom, unable to even look at me. He never pressed charges because I guess he was scared of what I might reveal about his rules if anyone started asking questions.